Now you put yourself in the screen. As soon as this is done, you're on. As soon as this is done, you don't have to click that. As soon as this is done, you're on.
Okay.
Because you're in the stream.
Hello. Welcome to the Integration Station. I'm Naturally Ashley, your host. And I'm here to, bring you just down the rabbit hole to the world of psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi. I had big plans for this, for bringing you guys all types of information, stories from people who are working with different psychoactives, some medicinally, some for spiritual purposes, some even as just sacraments in all words or all sense of the words, I guess we'll say. However, this is my first show. I'm not the most tech savvy person, so I brought in a co-host today, somebody Green Irene. So she's here to help me out, as well as we've been working really hard to create a nice room for this too. So you guys have a lot of cool stuff coming. So I really hope you stay tuned for all the good stuff we have stored. I will bring Green Irene on now just to make sure, again, that she's helping me with the tech stuff, make sure I know what I'm doing. And also, I thought that it was a great idea because while she is very much knowledgeable in the cannabis world, a big authority figure in that space, she doesn't know a lot about the other psychoactive plants, frogs, or fungi. So I thought for doing a first episode on just Psychoactives 101, she'd be a great co-host for that because then, we can get some of these questions answered for people who maybe are too scared to try these things, don't know what any of it is, maybe been experienced all the same propaganda you did for so long.
Well, you know what? It's funny because first of all, I have to say thank you for having me on your very first debut show. I know how scary it can be starting your first show. There's so much information to deliver. We don't have to do it
break it down.
chunk-sized bites, right? And sometimes we kind of feel like I don't want to undervalue the kindergarten student when it comes to cannabis or psilocybin, psychoactive different things, right? So I almost said psychotics. I myself am very nervous about it. In addition to that, starting your first show, yes, setting up the board and that sort of thing. In future shows, before we get started saying anything, we do want to make it clear that we weren't able to play our station ID disclaimer. And it's very important to know, you as the listener, that what we say here is not medical advice. We are not licensed to do that. And our thoughts and opinions are just that. It's shared knowledge of information that we have gathered, our interpretation on it as we relay it forward to you as though we were peer-to-peer talking to you. The station takes no responsibility for the comments, opinions, and suggestions of the content that is related through this show. So, although we didn't get the station ID set up, and I will help you to ensure that your board is set up, because it's really hard to both produce and host simultaneously. Those of us who have been doing it a while kind of make it look easy only because we've been doing it a while.
The first time she's like, oh, it's so easy. You just do this, this, and this. And now I've got it on my laptop. I'm like, what was any of that? Like, come on.
Yeah,
I mean, a lot of credit to you, and I'm so grateful that we're close and I can, openly ask questions like that. So
that's cool. And you know what? It's about collaboration in this industry, right? And it's patients helping patients, people helping people. That's what it's all about. And so thank you for having me on. I'm glad I got to introduce the ID station. And yes, I kind of am sort of the perfect guest for you because much like I was about cannabis 15, 20 years ago, very afraid of it because of my education on the subject. And I didn't want to dabble with the voodoo of things like mushrooms. My God, magic mushroom. I mean, I remember when, as a kid, they went around the school with black mollies. That's nothing more than a caffeine pill, basically. I was terrified of those. So me being afraid, but considering it from a health perspective, maybe I do have the right questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love I love that. And I felt the same thing. So I'm going to have on a lot of experts, a lot of people who've been working with this medicine a long time, a lot of people who, made their entire profession, career around this, or their entire lifestyle. So having somebody on that is like the listeners out there, I thought was perfect. And I'm grateful. Another thing that you mentioned that I think is really important to bring up here is that you said saying psychoactive reminds you of psychotic. And I think that's part of the stigma too, part of the stigma that we're working really hard. People have dedicated their entire life and legacy to ending that stigma when it comes to cannabis and all of these medicines as well.
And here's something that I've learned just in listening to you, some of your programming to date, some of the other hosts who have been experimenting with different psychoactive medicines, that sort of thing. Although I have a little bit, I can't even say I have experience. I mean, I've messed around a little bit with mushroom honey, like mushroom infused honey, to help me get through in the dark days. And I call them the dark days. And that's usually around, I would say, mid-February to late March, just before spring hits. I suffer, like many autoimmune deficiency people, from something called seasonally affected depression, right? And that mushroom honey helped me, but the stigma that's attached to it, I didn't want to keep taking it, even that little minuscule. So I know that it's fear that I have to take and set aside, and it's fear of indoctrined or taught, learned behavior. Yeah. And I know that you work with a lot of people on that. So I'm looking forward to you helping to get
doctors and therapists specifically too. A lot of time nurses too. Oftentimes nurses go off and do their own practice and things like that as a practitioner, which I think is beautiful now that I'm seeing. But here's the thing too, is even these words of psychedelic, that was created by a psychiatrist that was working with these things. The 12-step program for AA, that was created by people who were working with LSD. This has been ongoing for so many years. And even before all of that, all of the science, there was the spirituality behind it. There was the actual doctrine of signatures that came before the doctors, where we would look at nature and see, oh, wow, this mushroom looks like the brain. This mushroom looks like the ears. Look, this flower buds and has 5 petals. That must be good for us because it shapes the human body as a star. That's how we knew apples were good for us. You cut them open, there's a star, the doctrine of signature. So this comes through in nutrition and in spirituality. When you look at the Bible, you look at all the theories that are around that. And, I even want to share what Terence McKenna said about Yahweh saying, we don't want them eating the fruit from the tree of knowledge because they'll become just as we were or just as we are. So there is a lot of interpretations, a lot of things. And again, with bringing out this disclaimer, I'm not discrediting anything there either. Your beliefs are your own, but I'm just saying and sharing information that there's also a lot of theories and a lot of science and spirituality around these things. And they've been here just as long as us, perhaps even longer. It said like the beginning of all creation may have even been the mushroom, at least of our vegetation. It would have started as algae, that algae turning into mycelium, into mushrooms, into mosses, and then the entire ecosystem built on us as part of the evolution. This brings in the frogs and things like that too. When you guys see my new intro video, you're gonna love it. I got a frog with a DNA strand and a monkey with the mushroom and all the history.
That's very cool. I think some of the stigma that I think some of the reason that the stigma continues to be supported is fear. I think that's a big thing. And so I think you sharing all these different philosophies and going back to how this applies to that and that applies to this. I mean, I just read just because I kind of knew I was coming on the show, right? And it was kind of like, oh shit, what am I going to say? Other than the fact that I'm very fearful of this. I kind of looked up to see if there's any mushrooms that work on the endocannabinoid system. Don't know anything more of it than this much of a paragraph, but there is a mushroom. And I guess you had never heard of it either before. So it's something we're going to investigate.
Yeah.
This is all the types of information you're going to help share. And information in that sense is very powerful in that it reduces the fear. Yeah. It reduces the fear. Virginia Satir.
It starts creativity or curiosity.
Which is what we do in hypnosis. So Virginia Satir was an amazing family therapist. And she says, all these writers have said historically that man's biggest fear was to die, that we were afraid of perishing. And that's not true at all. I mean, look at this number of suicides in the world. Okay. We're not that afraid of dying. And look at the amount of stupidity. Okay. Yeah. That's not the number one fear is change, to be outside of the unfamiliar. And so many of us will stay in an environment, no matter how uncomfortable it is, we will find a way to get comfortable with it in order to avoid that change. And so I think I'm finally at a stage where I'm saying, I'm going to put my fear aside. Let's get started on a routine. And where would you start in your practice? Not knowing me, if I had said to you, I really don't know where to start, but I know that I'm being called to the mushroom. I feel like this is the route that I should be taking. How do we get started?
Yeah, you share so much here that I'd like to unpack. To answer that question specifically, where to start is in the research. You have to do your due diligence, figure out, you have to source. You need to know what it is that you're sourcing. You need to make decisions. You need to know, are you going to macro dose or micro dose? Maybe find a scale chart. So there's many people putting them out there. We have them like a little psilocybin manual. You have to also go with what you're called to. If you're just saying, I want to go on a psychedelic experience because I want to have a spiritual awakening or a psychedelic awakening, something, then find out what's your medicine, what's calling you. I do these integration calls often after retreats. It's something I really love to do. Most of the time I do one-on-one coaching with people. So to have the opportunity to sit with a group in an intimate way, after they've had this transformational time, and a lot of what they're saying is that, I was coming just for a spiritual awakening. And it's like, and then they find out that mushrooms weren't their medicine. It's that they were doing it because of the fad, because it is becoming a fad, just like diets do. But
cannabis too. We got a lot of designer weed out there right now. So,
but what is cool is that intuitively I'll talk to these women and I'll say, oftentimes it's women at these retreats, and I'll say something about Blue Morning Glories was one that just came up recently. Sometimes it's coffee. Sometimes it's these other medicines that are just so subtle. Cacao, chocolate, another one. These are all psychoactive plants, you guys. So you're not, just because I'm saying, psilocybin is one that I've been working with for 20 years, doesn't mean that that's going to be your medicine. Just like the ketogenic worked for your neighbor, but you gained, an extra 30 pounds and it didn't work for you because you felt sick and hungry the whole time. It's very much a bio-individual thing. So you have to sit with yourself. You have to figure out, what is it that you're being called to? Why is your why? Why is your why what your why is? What is that? Do this work. And then you figure out, okay, well, what dose do I want? What have other people done? You can just look up in YouTube trip reports. That's something that I enjoyed doing for a long time. I spent a long time, even though I was working with mushrooms, but just sitting with Terence McKenna almost in a meditative state, just absorbing what he was understanding at that time.
So what about, so someone like myself, I understand the value. I've done a little enough research to say, you know what, I'm going to go to the expert. But just because I need a roof on my house doesn't mean I'm going to become a professional roofer. I just want to go find the professional. I want to know enough to know that this is a good roofer. So I'm coming to you. You're my roofer. I don't want to learn about it. I don't want to become an expert, but I want you to help me.
Well, your question was around fear.
Right.
And you made a really valid point that it's the information that helps you get over the fear, because
Right.
the more it's the fear feeds the ignorance, and the ignorance feeds the fear. But once you step out of that and you start looking things up for yourself, you become more curious to look for more, right?
Right. So now someone that's experiencing, okay, so an autoimmune deficiency condition like fibromyalgia during fibro flares. I've heard that not only can microdosing with mushrooms on a daily basis help elevate your mood and your attitude, like adjust the attitude a little bit too much maybe sometimes. Oh, look, he fell down a flight of stairs. No, I'm only joking. And that's how I picture mushrooms. And again, there I go, supporting the stigma. I don't mean to do that. But when I think of mushrooms, I think about Beavis and Butthead on the couch. That stupid, ridiculous cartoon I caught wind of once. And kind of went, oh, that's kind of what I picture. But it's not really like that, is it?
No, even in the party days when I was working with it, I knew that there was something different to it. It wasn't the same as alcohol. Even cannabis, it wasn't the same as that either. It had this different intelligence, which I also see as a nutritionist with food and and many other psychoactives as well. They have this different intelligence, this different energy, this different messaging. I mean, it still comes back to love is always the answer, but it still is this different energy that we're taking into us willingly. You have to be an active participant in it, and then it's going to help you with whatever you need. So if you're talking about your nervous system, which fibro would be, mushrooms are great at that, because when we look at the mycelium and how it works as a network, connecting and translating messages from the trees, so that the grandmother tree will say, oh, we need nutrients here and here and here. It's the mycelium, the mushrooms, before the mushrooms start actually fruiting, it's the mycelium underneath that's always existing that connects the forest to have those kinds of conversations and feed it in a permaculture way. That's why permaculture is such a beautiful thing. It does that inside of ourselves too. So the nervous system is a great example for that. And this is also why a lot of mushrooms are great for anti-cancer and things like that too, because again, it's reprogramming it, and it's saying, those don't actually, it knows the difference between what's supposed to be there and what's not, because it remembers. It has a different memory, a different lifetime than we do.
That makes so much sense to me. I mean, for so long, somebody said it to me about 10, 15 years ago, about the same time that I started consuming cannabis, how much like plants, the humans, that we as humans are. I mean, we need water, we need nutrients, we need sunshine, we need a rest time, and we evolve out of these seeds and into this beautiful plant, and then gradually decay, and our energies be released into the universe. And when I look at the mushrooms, I'm starting to see more and more of this, which affords me the opportunity to put away fear. But again, public service announcements of the 80s and 80s, which is what I grew up on, or late 70s, early 80s, they were really impactful.
Much like the ones today, the service announcements that they're sharing with the kids.
I unfortunately do not watch TV, so I don't see them.
Yeah, they're all over YouTube, everything. A lot of it pushes junk food and also pushes all of the other sanitary measures, Okay. So it's, eat the junk food and then, I guess, give away your power for your own immune system. Right. But, this propaganda, it never ended. They just changed what they're talking about. Right. They're like, okay, well, we'll end this war, but we're going to start another war. It's the same tools, just a different.
Right. So when it comes to mushrooms in particular, I right away say, am I going to zap out and, they're going to take me away pretty soon? Like, am I going to go on a trip that I can't come back from? Am I going to, again, Virginia Satir says it's so scary to create change. Well, you know what? I may not like everything about my world, but I can handle it. And if all of a sudden I throw a new component of crazy in there, like psychotic, can that happen?
Okay, so here's the thing on that is a lot of the time when this was happening, when people were actually going crazy off of these things, it was a lot of the time government CIA type experimentation using the television and psychedelics and
and hypnosis too, and K
hypnosis.
Ultra.
Yeah, and this was really changing people's minds. So these are the people that was happening to. What we're seeing through science today, which for a very long time was oppressed, is that it actually helps with people with that are on antipsychotic drugs, and that you can even work with microdoses of mushrooms specifically while on many of them to wean off of the crazy side effects and withdrawal symptoms, because they are insane. Brain zaps, like all of these things, puking and and being on the toilet for days at a time.
Not to mention the brain damage, the tissue damage that actually occurs after long time use, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just crazy. And it's my understanding, like,
and people don't like change, as you said, especially when you know that the change is going to be so difficult and you feel a little bit of it and you're like, I'm just going to go back to where I was. To protect yourself, it's okay. This is why when I was going through my changes in life, I mean, I'm always consistently changing and I embrace those parts of me now, but at the time it was really scary. What do you mean, like, get sober? What do you mean stop drinking? What do you mean quit smoking cigarettes? I identified with all of these things and many more things that we can talk about as we get to know each other. But it was Mama Nature that I turned to. I was like, okay, if anybody's good at change and can do it in a beautiful manner, even the ugly things in a beautiful way, it's Mama Nature. So that's why I did my first book the way I did.
Yeah. Do you have a copy of that?
Yeah.
So this first book, and it's Be the Change, and it's changing with the seasons. And I know you've evolved so much from just this level of change and just continue to growing forward and writing several books. I mean, so getting ready for the mushrooms, you're saying, so is there a real fear? Can someone fatally overdose using mushrooms?
No one's ever overdosed using mushrooms.
Can you go psychotic?
Some people have, but here's the thing. It's not the same as people are saying it is, or the way that the stigma is, right?
The propaganda promotes it. Yeah,
there's actually a really amazing theory that I'm just going to send you guys as a resource. Look up Terence McKenna and schizophrenia. If you type those two things in at the same time, you'll get a wealth of resources around these subjects. And so what it was saying was that people with these psychotic issues, specifically schizophrenia, are most likely actually shaman that travel between worlds already, and that it's the medicine itself that's going to help them understand their purpose in life so that they can do their work that's here to do, and that the issues that they're having and the reason why they're going psychotic is because they're not able to express themselves, because they're in a scary environment. They're not accepted here in this culture. They want to be out of their body because it's not comfortable here, because there's a lot of things changing on an energetic scale right now.
I remember the very first time during a meditative practice where I had that transient elevation experience where you literally feel like you are lifting outside of your body. The very first experience was so frightening. I snapped back into place and did a double take. But then I thought, oh, that was kind of cool. I have to see if I can do it again. Because I'm a bit of a junkie, I guess, when it comes to meditation. The experiences of meditation and hypnotic meditation in particular is one of my favorite. But that elevation into separate. So yes, I can understand certainly how that would be addicting for another personality.
Yeah, and let's talk about especially if they don't need the psychoactives, because it's been so stigmatized. They're actually most likely deprived from it. Right. Like nature deficit disorder, which children are being now diagnosed with NDD. And it's like, once you get the nature back into the body, I think it's the same with people on antipsychotic medications. They are deprived in psychedelic therapies.
Right. And I don't doubt that one bit. I mean, I think science after the Dark Ages really went through yet another healthcare scream bad season in which pharmaceuticals, and they have their time and place. I say it often. I get hit by a car, don't show up with a joint, right? Yeah. You better have stronger medicine. That's what science is all about. And I love the testing and I love the advancements we made. We can't get stuck in the pharmaceutical synthetic world. And is there any sort of fear about that around mushrooms? Because I know mushrooms are following a very similar route. And I use the term mushroom. I know there's other terms, but are they following the same sort of path? They seem to be following the same sort of path as what cannabis did for legalization in the medical world.
Yeah, cannabis opened the door for everything to come through. MDMA, mushrooms, all that. Cannabis is just after school. My friends there, oh my God, you have to check them out if you've never seen them yet. But yeah, they did a beautiful whiteboard presentation of that, of cannabis literally opening the door and everything else is coming through. And that is because there is medicinal purposes for all of them. They were all created, just like many diets were created for specific purposes. And this is just a science that's starting to get documented, because for a long time it was oppressed. Who knows what was burnt in those like witch trials, and everything else in history, because history is written by him, whoever he is. It's his story, right? So it's only one version of the piece. There's so much that has been taken out, the misinformation that you talk on so often. And so, yeah, where were we?
And that comes from the missing information. Yeah. So people gather, they absorb this much, and then they share that and build a story around that, and that gets shared. You ever played a telephone game?
Yeah.
And I think that happened a lot with a lot of natural medicines. I mean, as you were speaking there to the natural medicine and how certain things got displaced, the healing from nature. Yeah, because there's displaced by science almost.
There's so many medicines, like over 144 psychedelic mushrooms. And this is new work by Paul Stamets. I'm sure all of this was documented before, but thank God for him doing it now. Mm-hmm.
Bringing it back to the forefront to where we're
because
at
that
today.
Was a lot of digging that he did. That was a lot of travel, a lot of time, a lot of energy, and he didn't have any background. All he had was passion. And I think
have in this industry.
I think that's what a lot of people want to get back, and this is where the psychedelics are helping as well. They mean mind manifesting, but also mind at that time meant they were also referring to soul. The psychiatrists were, so it's also soul manifesting. When you think about the term entheogen, that's the divine within. Now we're getting into the religion and the sacraments. So there's all these names, and this is just mushrooms alone, you guys. When you get into the psychoactive plants, this is my baby. This is my Bible. Okay, this is the psychoactive plants. There's no frogs or fish. A few mushrooms in here. When you look at the mushroom books, they're just as big. So.
Yeah, you do an awful lot of studying, and it's one of the reasons I think you're able to speak so eloquently on much of the subject. So for a patient, a newbie patient that's coming on and saying, look, I'm all natural in a lot of ways. I really want to introduce mushroom therapy as part of my regime. What would you propose? It's become my understanding, and again, through talking with you, I've gathered all that information. I'm going to blurt it all out at you now. How do you like me now?
It's all good.
But you had said there's different, much like cannabis, there's different strains, and I know with some of my patients that I'll propose this lineage of strains versus this lineage of strains based on their aches and pains. And it's become my understanding that mushrooms or psilocybin is much the same way in that different geniuses, I guess.
Yeah. For
different.
Yeah, and also people are making hybrids. Like we got many people, mycologists, not just people, specific people in our network that are making their own strains and that are doing this kind of discovery. And there are many others, outside of us that are too. I think cannabis is way more ahead when it comes to that breakdown. But some of the information is there and it's becoming more prevalent, I guess. I personally am just a believer that what you need is what you get.
Your body will crave it. Your body will crave it. When we have those cravings, it's because our body, and if a sudden food comes to memory, chances are there's an ingredient in that food that we're craving. Our bodies has that memory that's where I got that protein, or that's where I got that B12 from. So again, if I were to start mushrooms today or tomorrow, would you propose a tea for, we're going into bad weather, which means I'm experiencing a lot of aches and pains, which means I'm doing an awful lot of hypnotic meditation in which I'm trying to train my brain to reorganize pain and inflammation and send out the healers throughout my body without having to zap out or zone out in the middle of multiple conversations throughout the day. So would you propose something like starting with a tea, or would you propose some sort of macro dose? I've heard the term hippie dose, terrifies me, but at the same time, with the right people around me, maybe not, right? I've learned more and more, which is one of the reasons why I love that you're doing this show. You have so much to share. You've been doing this for so long, like some of your retreats, people go on these retreats. Like sometimes I wish I wasn't your mom just so I could go on one of these retreats. And I know I could too, but it's just kind of, it's different, right? It's different. So, but they do sound awesome. And with these retreats, you sort of do kind of like what I'm at, the sort of question I'm asking, isn't it? Like you might say, oh, you're going to have mushroom tea before bed, or when you wake up in the morning, or let's do a hippie dose and then a maintenance dose. I don't know. I'm I'm thinking, I'm relating it to cannabis, and this is how I would play around with it. So
it's different for everybody, and this is why having a coach or somebody who's been working with the medicine for a long time, or to be going out and like finding a community to talk about these things with, it's very important to be surrounded by at least one person that knows what they're doing, because it can be hard to navigate those realms on your own. And I know, because I'm a lone wolf and very shamanistic and doing these solo travels, so I know how important it is to have people. And I have had mentors, but I've had to go out of my way to put that effort in, and that was hard in itself, asking for help or to reach out. But it's very, very important in these realms, because it's not just like smoking a cigarette. Yes, you still need to have intention. Tobacco is one of those psychoactive plants. Okay, it's beautiful, very much a sacrament used around the world. For smudging, for opening ceremonies, to connecting and opening the gates to the divine, and be able to have those conversations. But it's also way more gentle. It's not taking you to other worlds when you're working with mushrooms and DMT and some of these other medicines. You are very much going to another dimension, and will sometimes see, elves or other things.
I'm certain, yeah. So having a coach or somebody beside you that you trust, that knows what it is you're going through, it's a judgment-free zone. Say just allow the experience, and you have that safety. So once again, removing that fear.
Yeah, and it is very bio-individual. Like oftentimes I see what works is a big macro dose with a maintenance micro dose. That works very well for a lot of people, because then they go for, the big transformational hero's journey dose, maybe 5 grams of dried psilocybin mushrooms, for example, and then microdose on maybe 50 milligrams to 250 milligrams for a few days, or intuitively for the rest of the time, because the big dose takes them on a journey. The microdose allows them to be an active participant in their life experience, which is the life journey. The difference between a hero's journey dose is that you're doing a lot of, what might take 10 years of therapy, you're doing in a 6-hour experience. And very much you are on your own. That's another thing about having a trip sitter or something, is that it's about having somebody that'll hold space with you and just allow you to do your work. You don't necessarily want interruptions in that time. You don't want to be entertaining. You don't want to be host, or it to be, a party scene. These are sacraments. They are very, very powerful. If you want to be entertained, they will entertain you. But if you want help therapeutically, then you do have to, come at it with a different mindset for sure.
Right. Okay. Now, I've heard a lot of people talk about using them for depression, and I see that you're at your halfway mark. So if you wanted to go to your sponsors, I'll show you where that is in here, except we don't have them loaded up. So we're not going to go to sponsors today, and we're going to use a closing from another show. We're just going to go right on by the sponsorship, and we'll carry on. This is the power of live TV. You don't get to have your 3-minute break in which you get to sip your tea and rebreathe. But we keep our time up here on the clock.
Okay.
And that kind of helps us to say, oh, yeah, okay, it's time for a break from our sponsors.
So this is our non-commercial time, everyone.
Right, non-commercial commercial time. Let me announce. So Ashley will be here every Sunday at 11 a.m. with the Integration Station, which is all about
psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi.
Plants, frogs, and fungi. Psychoactive plants, frogs, and fungi. That's a tongue twister. Wow,
I love you guys.
And then we have Monday, we have Reefer Reporters, and they're telling us about the cannabis news with mushy moments about cannabis and psychedelic news around the globe. Which also there's a second show also midweek on Thursdays, also Reefer Reporters. Tuesdays we have my show, which is THC Talk Time. Where we're talking about the medical and recreational side of things and just anything to do with cannabis. Wednesdays, of course, we have a guided meditation time and the Pace Radio show at 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Thursdays, Reefer Reporters. Fridays, the Fibro Fight series, which is actually expanding and changing its name in the very near future within the next couple of episodes.
Cool. Another something exciting. And isn't it cool? Like 6 days a week, the show's going now. So.
Oh, it's just beautiful. Yeah. It's just beautiful. And the introduction of your show, there's so much information you have to share. It's hard to pick out what is necessary. And I think once your listeners start having are on a regular feed, they'll gather all the extra information because you have so much to share. I can't see you running out of information. And as you say, this new research is coming
There's
down.
so much new coming all the time.
So you do a lot more than just psychedelics and frog medicine. You actually are a licensed certified nutritionist. You've done hormonal health.
Yeah.
And you have a lot of certifications and educations under your belt, like training seminars, those sorts of things to absorb that information.
Many years of health means if anybody wants to get the medical training that medical professionals are entitled to, but don't often have the time for, and you want to get the new news, or if you are a medical professional that wants the new holistic approach and, maybe going into your own private practice, go check out Health Means. They are amazing. They host health summits consistently, and it's all about holistic ways of doing things. It's all medical professionals teaching other medical professionals, and it's just incredible.
And that's Health Means?
Means, yeah.
So MEANS.
Yeah, because health means holistic. Health does not mean what the doctors are doing today, which it's not the doctor's fault either.
No, it is
they're trained.
That's right.
Their board of directors who does their curriculum, signs off on everything, and who pays them is Big Pharma. Okay, this is not by choice. This is a set up system.
This is an educational perspective. You don't go to a garage to get your roof fixed, and you don't go to a contractor to have your brakes done, and it's the same thing. So there is the pharmaceutical end of
you don't want a demolition team or a surgical team going in to tell you about health. They're getting paid for the surgeries. You don't want a demolition team building your house.
Right. Right. And that's where being responsible and being the first line of defense in your health and wellness really does come into the obvious of limelights is you have to be in charge. You are what you eat. Your medicine will help determine the quality of your mind and your attitude and your spiritual experience. Like, are you going to do so with the show? I know you're going to have a number of guests on here and there. Are you going to share specifics like about particular mushrooms or about particular use of mushrooms?
I'm sure over time, at least for the beginning, I'm thinking experts in different medicines, because I think you guys will all find it interesting to know that some of these things you likely already have in your home, like nutmeg, like morning glories, like coffee and cacao, and these things that were once sacred, but we end up like, if you think about Coca-Cola, you guys have Coca-Cola in your house, probably most of you, but coca is a beautiful plant in the Amazon rainforest, also used to make cocaine. This is what that coca plant was used for. That's from South America. Cola, that's another psychoactive plant from Africa. Somebody had this genius idea to bring the two of them together into this bubbly drink that would have at the time had benefits, I'm sure. And then that got turned into something disgusting. Okay. Yeah. This is the same reason why Tim Hortons does so good with coffee and hot chocolate. Both of them are medicines from the Amazon rainforest. Both of them are psychoactive plants. These not only can help you, but they could also be your poison if misused. And our culture has designed it to be misused and abused, because they can also become addicting when they're concentrated, as you can see with cocaine and the opiate crisis. Opiate comes from poppies. You guys have poppies in your garden, maybe.
Yeah, but coffee.
Coffee
is probably the worst, highest addicted substance. I think I know. I'm certainly anyway. And it's so bad for you. It's so bad for you. But yeah, there's a large variety of plants that are very, very medicinal. I mean, this is where most medicines come from anyway. We take the plant, we take out the good stuff, we bastardize it a little bit and turn it into a synthetic pharmaceutical. If we can't mimic it, otherwise we just utilize it and tell everybody else they can't use it. And that's from a pharmaceutical perspective. So now coming back to the to using mushrooms and stuff, let's just say I didn't know you and I listened to your show today and I decided, okay, well, I know I can't cause a lethal overdose. I'm going to try some mushrooms tonight. And I just have mushrooms that
say, let's go for a trip.
Yeah, that Joey down the road gave me, and I don't know what they are. What can I expect to experience?
So chances are you'll feel a little tired, at least at first. Part of that is the resistance. If you can stay awake through that, you're going to have a huge, a more likely chance of being entertained and getting more positive messages. If you're resisting that, this is oftentimes when people can slip into the hell or the bad trip. Because when there's resistance, especially after you've already made the decision to ingest, you're volunteering yourself to heal. And if you then resist that healing because it feels a little uncomfortable, a little tired, a little whatever, and you go and you laying down is fine. I'm like not saying anything against that, but sometimes people do it with the wrong mindset. It's not, I'm going to lay down and rest because I feel good. Sometimes they're like, it's just pure resistance. And in which case there can be these like hellish things that come up. Maybe you have a bad vision. Maybe you feel nausea in your stomach. Sometimes people puke, but it's very rare. It's not a purgative. Some psychedelics are mushrooms more often than not. It's just that you'll feel a little tired. Maybe start feeling like a mushroom, like a little fungi. I sometimes feel like I'm slimy or like in the dirt or like kind of being reborn. It's a weird feeling. But once you make it past that, you can oftentimes have a really insightful vision. You might start seeing, all the things that are wrong that you need to take responsibility for and fix. You may see all the things that are right and be filled with love and validation. You may feel a lot of emotions come up. When the emotions come up, I oftentimes turn myself to Kundalini yoga, and I use my movement and my breath work to move it out. One thing you had mentioned around meditation being very important to you, one thing that Terence McKenna said was that, meditation is all great, but you have to be your own guru. It's just not fast enough. Not everybody can, in a short amount of time, as short of a time as we need to get ourselves together as a human race, all learn how to meditate and take the time that it takes to get there. Psychedelics will take you there.
Time warp.
Yeah, time warp speed. You're there in the meditative state. So if you're someone who's had a hard time meditating and you try meditating on mushrooms, when you go back to meditating in your regular life, you're going to get there every single time because now you've been in that other dimension. And that's the same dimension that anybody who does dream work would get to. So I did a scale when I did writing for Sociadelic. I really want to go back to them and write some more because I just love them and I still talk about them so much. I've just been so busy. So Daniel, if you're watching this, Noah, still love you, brother. But I did a chart, and I actually got this idea from my own mentor, Dr. Dan Engel, where he categorized the three main points or categories of psychedelics, from tonic being like a cacao or chocolate, as you would know, caffeine, to a more like intermediate cannabis, mushrooms, and then there would be the master plant teachers, iboga, ayahuasca, things like that. And then I even went a step further and said that beyond the master realm, and that would be the dream work, the astral projection, the meditation. I think that this is all beyond the psychoactive plants, but they all help you get to those points, to find that divine within, to find that purpose within, to be your best self or that highest potential,
That's very cool. That's very cool. And, it doesn't surprise me that we have the tools here. Everything we need in life is present and made available to us as human beings. It's part of our evolution. I mean, I like the theory of, apes jumped up, monkeys fell out of the trees and danced around, saw mushrooms on the ground, really liked them, stood up and went, "Are there more?" It's stoned ape theory. But, I think all of these have some validity in our reality today. I think we are, as a species, constantly evolving and growing. And I love the idea of expanding my mind. Can you assure me, from all of your experience and all of your studies, that I will not wind up with brain damage?
Yes.
Okay.
They're really good.
Unlike pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
Pharmaceuticals, that guarantee isn't there. In fact, it is very likely you will have some brain change from steady use of pharmaceuticals.
Chances are you'll have brain change,
but in a positive way.
But it's not going to be brain damaging. It might damage your ego, which can be painful, especially for people who are in the therapy space or in the doctor space, because they've invested so much. And I talk to these people all the time. So if you're one of them, like, feel free, because I can introduce you to others who've been there, but I think it's really important here to realize that these are medicines that have been used for these plants. Frogs and fungi have been growing with us as species since we've been here. They've been here longer than us, mushrooms specifically.
Yes.
We are symbiotic. Dennis McKenna and the McKenna Academy, which is wonderful resource, by the way, for anybody. They do different seminars and summits every year, multiple times a year. I'll likely see you in there if you get a hold of that resource now. And they did a symbiotic symposium or symbiosis symposium or something like that. And it was just beautiful the way that they brought it all together, that we really have been all living symbiotically for so long, and that it really is like a type of nature deficit disorder. A lot of these disorders are because you're missing the whole picture. When you're working with pharmaceuticals, that's just a part of the plant that's been synthesized. If you're getting food. For example, I bring a lot of things back. You'll notice if you don't know me already, I do bring a lot of things back to food because I know the nutrition world. But things, you'll see citric acid. A lot of the time you'll see citric acid on an ingredient label and you'll think, oh, that's lemon juice. That's healthy. But this is not lemon juice anymore. This is now made out of black mold and grown in a lab. So people are getting mold toxicity. So what's happening in the food industry is very much what's happening in the pharmaceutical industry. You know, you've now taken a beautiful plant that was once medicine and synthesized it to a point that now it's only a part of the whole, which means it's only a part of the picture, which also means that there's room for side effects.
Okay, so quick question then to that note. Have they done the same thing with mushrooms? And I ask this because I got a bottle from somebody and said, these came from me and I thought you might like trying them. And it's mushrooms, but in a veggie capsule. And they were doing that with cannabis, and they did synthesize cannabis, nabilone and dronabinol, I believe, or marinol. But either way, it was a really bad experience by synthesizing the THC molecule or synthesizing the CBD molecule was a very bad and rough introduction for many people's CB1 and CB2 receptors, which is where where the cannabinoids go. Yeah. So are they synthesizing the molecular structure of mushrooms? And is that something we need to be aware of?
So the capsules are its own thing. A lot of our mycologists make capsules because they're easier for the patient to consume because it's not the tastiest thing. They have their own capsule machines. Some of them have hand machines. Some people do them straight by hand. Some people have the big machines and they'll do like psychedelic pictures with them and things.
What's in those capsules?
Just ground mushrooms.
So it's just ground up in a powder form.
Sometimes they stack it with niacin, which it's called the Stammet stack, with niacin, lion's mane mushroom, and psilocybin. Other people do their own stacks, which just means mixing other adaptogens. What would be the purpose for that? So the reason why you do this Stammet stack is because the niacin picks up your B levels, which can kind of give you a flush, but it also oxygenates your blood and picks you up. Some people, if they get a niacin flush, they'll go a little flush in the face. Most people will be just fine with it. They'll get what they need. The lion's mane mushroom works because it actually rebuilds the nervous system. It works on nerve tissues, and a lot of adaptogens are used by the mycologists in their stacks because adaptogenic herbs actually help us be our best selves. They help us adapt to stress. They help us adapt to the change that we're consistently going through and often resisting. So it just helps us in those ways. But they are synthesizing it. So if you go for clinical studies of psilocybin, the kind of stuff they're pushing in trials and stuff, they're making injections and doing it that way. And
you're going to share this information in bits and pieces and bite-sized chunks,
honestly,
right?
I'm obviously going to do it in as bite-sized chunks as I can. I'm going to be bringing on professionals on specific medicines to pick their brains, at least in the basics, and we'll go down the rabbit hole on the stuff that you guys engage with most often. We'll bring back some of those guests to dive a little bit deeper. My expertise is in the integration space itself, helping people prepare, experience, and integrate being the biggest component there. That's the rebirth. Now you've had this experience. Now what are you going to do with this information? How are you going to reach those goals? How are you going to live out this purpose? A lot of the time it means reconnecting to that childhood self, that creativity, that purpose, that passion, that drive, aligning those chakras, those kinds of things. This is my realm. So when it comes to me and my practices, it's still oftentimes around nutrition, herbology, these basics of sustainability so that we can sustain ourselves, not only as individuals, but later on in a legacy way,
culturally
culturally too. Oftentimes what you're going to hear from me or my expertise being around the entheogens, like these things, these kinds of plants, the frogs, the fungi, the naturals. I'm not the expert in the synthetic space, though I will bring on some experts to talk on LSD and to talk about different types of DMT and things like that as well. Because, I'll be honest with you, I've worked with DMT, and I was asked recently, well, what kind of DMT was it? And I know that there's other kinds, and I know the person who, gave me that experience knows what he's talking about. But I didn't retain the information because my thing is,
experience, not
to
enjoy the journey, not the
and I retain the information when I'm at that point. So I am going to go soft with you guys too, because I'm there too, and a lot of the experts I'm bringing in, they're much more intelligent and experienced on those specific things. So we're going to be on a journey together, learning and growing through what we go through in this life.
That's awesome. So I don't think we're going to have any questions today per se, but where can people, how can we send questions to you? How can we reach out to you? I know Al has all of the hosts at Pace Radio can be reached through Pace Radio Network, of course, and that's paceradio.net. But you have your own website and stuff where people can reach out to you, book you as a coach or a guide.
Tons of free resources there too, you guys. There's tons of stuff there. My books are there. Our Integration Collective is there. Tons of free stuff. If you want to do the coaching or ceremonies, everything's there. We're pretty transparent and try to give a wealth of information in one place. So if you have questions, yes, reach out to Al, reach out to Green Irene. You can also go to www.elementalgrowth.org. You can see what we've got there, or you can email me, ashley@elementalgrowth.org. And there you can send any questions or just talk directly.
Okay.
Yeah.
And again, I believe your website is up on the Pace Radio Network website.
I think so too.
But just in case, it's Elemental, just like it sounds, just like it's elemental.
Yeah.
Growth.
Oh, right there.
Growth.org. And that's your book that just came out.
Yeah, this one just came out this year, Rebirth. And this was a lot of my most popular articles from Sociodelic. One of my clients loved it so much that she helped me put it together into a book so we could get it out to more people.
Which is beautiful.
Yeah.
And that shares some of your trip down to Colombia and through the Amazon rainforest and all that fun
little niblets.
One of these days you'll share the whole story all at once. But in the meantime, we only get bits and bytes, folks. On that note, I have to show Ashley how to finish running this board and sign out when she's done chatting. So
next week we'll see you here, and I'll figure it out for myself.
I'm not coming back. I've already got 3 shows.
Yeah.
All right. So normally what we would have is right here, we would have our closing and we could say, peace out. Thanks for tuning in today, guys.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. What we're going to do is we're just going to bounce over to another page here, and we're going to use that generic closing. On that note, folks, thank you very much. Remember to tune in to Ashley every Sunday at 11. You should be saying this.
Every Sunday at 11. We'll see you guys here.
Ciao for now. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah,
I really do
it's
appreciate it.
I love you so much.
I love you.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network here at paceradio.net.
The views expressed by the individuals during this broadcast are their own opinions, and they may not be the same as those of their group or other organizations they may be involved with.
BMA Hydroponics has everything you need to succeed. Visit our hydroponics superstore at 404 Maitland Drive in Belleville, and we'll show you how to grow your own quality cannabis for pennies per gram. We're open Mondays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. and Thursdays and Fridays from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Call 613-967-9888. BMA Hydroponics. It's worth the drive.
The only way to go. At Legacy 420, we believe in being different.
Experience the difference of quality control.
Our labs provide tested formulations for all of our products.
Experience the difference in trust.
Our customers can trust that we are following up-to-date COVID precautions for their safety.
Experience the difference in accessibility.
We're open 7 days a week. Please visit our website, legacy420.com, or contact us for curbside pickup as well as nationwide mail order shipping.
Legacy 420 values overall wellness.
Come and experience the difference of Legacy 420.
Did you know that the Pace Radio Network isn't just a radio network? That's right, because most, but not all of our programming is now done via video and is then podcasted at paceradio.net. So if you want to watch our programming, you'll find us on the Pace Radio Network's Facebook page, plus the show's own page, and you'll find us live on the network's YouTube channel. And don't forget, you can find it all, video and audio, at paceradio.net.
A doctor's job is to relieve your pains, and when it comes to growing cannabis, the biggest pain is trimming. Let Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions take the pain away. Whether you're a home grower or a commercial operation, we have the cure. From 4 plants to 400 plants, garden size doesn't matter. Dr. Buck Cannabis Trimming Solutions comes to you with years of experience and professional discreet service. It's simple. We trim your weed, and we do a damn good job. Visit drbuckcts.com to book your trimming.
Enjoy the buzz of legalization with Campbellford Lifestyle Shop. From lights to plant nutrients, books, consumption accessories, and more, we've got all your basics to grow or consume cannabis. Visit our info center or take a look at our piercing services and body jewelry, now available in-store through Campbellford Lifestyle Shop, 17 Bridge Street West, Campbellford.
You're listening to the Pace Radio Network, here at paceradio.net.